Hi, I want to use this session to talk about interactive PowerPoint, and that is changing PowerPoint from a purely presentational tool to an interactive teaching tool. And the template I want to share with you are the ones that have been developed by Stephen Dalby and Lucy Harrison, who teach English at our college. And you can see the template is of a particular kind in that it's got two borders either side of the presentation slide, and in these borders there are icons, and these icons can be used as navigation tools to create movement throughout the lesson. In order for PowerPoint to be interactive, there's two main things need to go on. Firstly, the presentation needs to be non-linear, so it can jump about from start to finish to the middle, anywhere, and that navigation needs to be really clear, simple and fast. And in this template you can see that the icons would be hyperlinked to different parts of the presentation so that that movement can exist. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what icons you use. I mean, these are choices Stephen Dalby made. For instance, the keyboard, Stephen regarded as the start of the presentation, and then you've got the apple, which is a task for one learner or in pairs, and then this projection screen icon is actually a statement of the objectives. The speech balloon icon is a whole class task, so that's how it's different to the apple, involving big groups or the whole class. And then on the other side you've got the spanner and screwdriver, which are the main body of information, so these are the knowledge pages. I'm not using the megaphone on the example I'm going to give you. You could think up a use for that one. The light bulb is the reflection and review section, and then at the bottom the finish flag, as you can imagine, is the end of the presentation. So if I click on the finish flag there and I right click over it, I'm in edit mode of course in PowerPoint, you can see that the menu allows you to edit it as a hyperlink. So if I click that, you can see on my pane that it is indeed linked to slide 20, which is the end of the show, which makes sense. So each one of these icons is linked to different parts of the presentation, and that's how the movement can happen. Stephen color-coded the slides, so he copied the template, but he changed the background colour just to make it even more obvious. For instance, the start is red, but the objectives is yellow, and so on. So what I did with these slides was to create my own mini lesson, and I'm going to share that with you now. So I'll come out of that and I'll go into my mini lesson. So here we are again, the slides that I've just described, but now they're full of content, and I have hyperlinked using these icons to different places around the presentation. So when the learners come in to start the lesson, this might be the first screen they see. So I'll just go into presentation mode now, and just imagine I've got a group of learners and I'm going to talk about the ethics surrounding mandatory vaccinations. So that's the topic, and I'm going to start them off with a wake-up exercise, a starter task, and hence the apple, and I'm going to ask them, say in singular or in pairs, to consider these two questions, find out about them. Now if I've booked iPads from the e-learning team, I might distribute the iPads now and say, I've got a bit of research for you. Up to January 2022, can you find how many people in the UK have died with COVID being mentioned on their death certificate? And the second question, what percentage of UK people over 21 or maybe over 18 adults anyway, have had at least 2 vaccinations. So imagine them getting on their iPads or the phones if you allow it, and finding that information, reporting back and seeing if there's a consensus. Well, the information I've already discovered is as of late January 2022, there's 154,000 deaths recorded with COVID mentioned on the death certificate, and 80% of adults have been double vaccinated at least. Now you can see I used a tick on there, that's another icon, and the tick Stephen Dalby nominated as the answer to a question, a pre-planned answer to a question. So the learners say, well, what exactly are we doing this lesson? No problem, jumped straight to objectives. Bang, there we are. There's 3 objectives for this sample lesson. Assess the current UK situation in terms of COVID pandemic. Discuss the ethics of mandatory vaccination. I mean, that's the main point of the lesson, really. And to come up with their own view on the question of mandatory vaccinations. Where do they stand on it? Now, a lot of people say, maybe I don't know where I stand on it. Well, that's fine, because the task below, rate yourself out of 10 in terms of how confident you are in tackling these objectives right now. So this will help me set distance travel, because I can come back to this at the end of the lesson and say, rate yourself again. Okay, so there's the objectives. I might set them now a group task. Now, because this is screen capture tutorial, the video from YouTube that's in that screen is not going to play normally, so sorry about that, but I do assure you it does play. It will play in a lesson with an actual PowerPoint presentation live, and the particular presentation goes into the ethics of mandatory vaccination. Should certain workers be made to take the be immunised or not? Okay, so say they watch that, it's about 5 minutes long, and we'll have a whole group discussion about it to start to tease it out. And then I might go on to the knowledge now and say, well, look, we're going to look at 2 different professors, one very much in favour of mandatory vaccination, but another with a completely opposite opinion. We should not do it, it's ethically wrong. So the spanner and the screwdriver is my knowledge section, so straight into that now, and start with the yes. And this Professor Wilkinson is going to give some arguments about why we should have mandatory vaccination with certain workers. Now it's a bit text heavy, so what I've done is I've highlighted in bold some of the salient points, and if I advance a page, the yes campaign carries on arguing if it's necessary and proportionate. This professor is saying mandating vaccination is right, persuasion has so far failed, etc, etc. And then on to the no campaign. The doctors swore to do no harm to patients, but there are worries about injecting a perfectly healthy person with a vaccine that could potentially kill them in a very small minority of cases. And is that ethical? This professor thinks not, and so on and so on. The no campaign goes up to page 4. Okay, so it might be that the learners at this stage will say, can we just come back to the original objectives? What are you asking us to do? And there's the beauty of the icon again. Bang to the objectives. These are the 3 objectives. Okay, as the lesson progresses, it's coming towards an end. The light bulb is the review and reflection that I mentioned, so we can so I might use the 3 objectives to come back to particular reviews on the ethics of mandatory vaccination. What did we find about the current COVID pandemic? Did that worry you? I might ask an extension question, looking at the figures you found out. What can you indicate a future? Is it going to continue down and down, and we're going to learn to live with COVID, or might there be a new strain coming up, because we've had several in the past 2 years that might mean more serious implications. So you know about the ethical arguments, you've articulated themselves, the class has, they've listened to some expert opinion. So which point convinced you the most, and what's your own view on mandatory vaccination now as a result of all this? And I might cold call on this, and I might say, give me a particular individual, give me one argument that you found the most compelling. So after that review and reflection, I might set them one more thing. So we're gathering our thoughts, coming away from the ethics of mandatory vaccination, think about the lesson itself. In terms of the subject, come up with one thing you found easy or manageable about the subject, and then a couple of things you found tricky about the subject or just difficult. It might be in terms of knowledge, or it might be in terms of ethics. It's their choice. And then having found out more about the subject, number 3, give us things you want to find out more about after our lesson is finished. Okay. And then at the bottom, look at your rating from the start of the class. Do you feel more confident or less confident? And I might remind them that they did rate themselves out of 10. Where are you now? And then if I finish up, I'll say, right, this is what we've achieved, these 3 things, and I might say the next time we meet we're going to look at pandemics as a whole, the historical cycles of pandemics, and like the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 and how that resolved itself, and can we learn any lessons from history, etc. So you can see that hopefully from that example how easy it is to navigate through it, and how responsive it can be to interruptions from learners or ideas that you might have yourself as the lesson progresses, and this kind of template enables you to do so. If you have any technical questions after this CPD input, do come down to the learning team in the learning lab, and you're welcome to ask any questions. If you've got teaching and learning, pedagogical questions to do with using this kind of PowerPoint, then speak to anybody from the quality team. We'll be happy to see you. So thank you for listening, and I hope you found that useful.